Hey, and a very warm welcome to the Into the LightWeb podcast with me, your hostess, Joanna Hunter, metaphysical teacher, spiritual life and business coach, published author, and the high priestess of the LightWeb, a spiritual technology that will change your life. This is the place to be to talk everything under the LightWeb, from consciousness, relationships, to money, to spiritual business, and everything in between. Hey, and warm welcome to the Into the LightWeb podcast with your hostess, me, Joanna Hunter. And I am joined in my $1 Million Lab series today by the gorgeous, the amazing, best-selling New York Times author, Christy Whitman. Hello, Christy. Come and introduce yourself to our audience and tell people a little bit about what you do out in the world.
Hi, Joanna. Thank you for that very nice introduction. So yes, I have been in this industry for 20 years. I have written 7 books. My newest book, The Desire Factor, is out now. I am a coach. I have certified over 3,000 Law of Attraction coaches through the Quantum Success Coaching Academy since 2008. I am an energy healer and I am a channeler for the collection of ascended masters called the Council of Light, the Quantum Council of Light. So I do workshops and pretty much everything online at this point, but group coaching through with the council, healings, different things like that. And really the biggest topic that I speak on is energy mastery and how each of us really, with obviously the information through the council, how each one of us really needs to learn how to become an energy master to be able to master and create our own lives.
I love this. I love this. So obviously inside our $1 Million experiment, we have got a lot of participants stepping up to creating their lives, starting to open up to the idea that their thoughts are creating the world around them and everything. And here you are, an expert on the law of attraction and all the things metaphysical. So tell us a little bit about how you started in this journey. Was this like something that you were born with and you like always kind of knew it deep down, or
No.
I did?
quite the opposite of that. I was about 21, 22 when I graduated college, right? And so I moved to Chicago, Illinois, because that's where, there was a lot of opportunities. I was born in Scottsdale, Arizona. At that time, it wasn't a real booming, area. And so I moved to Chicago. I attracted a job in a liquor company. So my job was to sell and distribute liquor to bars, restaurants, hotels, places like that. And I quickly went up the corporate ladder, got promoted by a supplier from a wine company. And so I had a lot of responsibility. I had a great paying job, it was making money, met a man, got engaged, and I was miserable. So all the things that I thought would make me happy didn't. And that was really, it's one thing to go towards a desire and think that that desire is going to finally make you happy. But when you get it and you're like, oh, this didn't do it. So for me, at a very young age, I was about 24 at this point, I was like, is this all there is? And that really got me searching, and that got me calling for something deeper. And so it broke off the engagement. I actually met a man that worked for the company I work for. We had a long distance relationship. I ended up took a lateral moved to Northern California where he lived. Okay. And broke up within a very short period of time because he was, thank God, the last bad guy I ever dated. But he introduced me to one person who actually, did hair, and I needed to get my hair cut. So I went and got my hair cut from Janine, and we had this amazing conversation. But the whole time I'm kind of like observing her and watching her. And there was something so different about her that I'd never met in another human being. Okay. So finally I just said to her, what the heck do you do? And she said, I meditate. Now, Joanna, this is 25 years ago, right? I never knew anybody that meditated. Right. And so my idea of someone that meditated was some guy with a long beard, white hair, and
smell of cabbage.
Sitting on a mountaintop, oming, in a yogi position. And
absolutely.
So paradigm just completely shifted when she said she meditated. So anyway, she introduced me to her meditation teacher, Melanie. And I went into Melanie's house. And again, totally different than anything I'd ever seen. She had incense and candles and clinky clinky new age music and,
Oh,
you know,
lovely.
angel statues everywhere. Invited me to sit down, not at a chair or a couch, but on the floor on a cushion. And the first thing she said to me is, you create your own reality. And something in me just bursted open. I knew that at a cellular deep level, I knew that to be true. And of course, my mind kicked in and said, how? And she said, your thoughts. You are either repelling things from you or attracting things to you based on the way you think. And so I didn't get it. You know, my thoughts are my thoughts. I didn't realize that they weren't me. And so she gave me an assignment to go home for a week, come back a week later, and just kind of discover and witness my thoughts. And I couldn't believe how negative I was. No matter what I accomplished, I would never be happy because I was constantly telling myself it wasn't enough. I wasn't enough. I wasn't, you know, small enough, big enough, tall enough, thin enough. You know, I wasn't accomplishing enough. I was so judgmental and so critical, not only of myself, but anybody I knew, drivers on the road, God himself. You know, I was just so in a negative place mentally.
That's the
And so,
start of my book. My book, Get Selfish, The Way Is Through, starts with I was going to be happy right after I had nailed all those things that you just said, right? Like
yeah,
when I had the perfect house, when I had the perfect weight, when I was like grew 10 inches taller, you know, like all the things that were impossible and some things that were possible. But at the same time, I had pinned all my hope that happiness was going to come when I get there. And it's just like you had got to the pinnacle and was like, ah, is this
yeah,
it?
yeah,
You know, and it's so, I hope that this podcast, my hope, my prayer with this podcast is that it reaches someone and they don't get to the top and realize it's pants, that they start to create what they truly desire before they get there. And then
yeah.
so they get to a new paradigm when they get there that's so fitting them so beautifully. So you've just been thrust into this like super woo world.
Yeah.
What comes next?
Well, I just started applying what I was learning. And again, that we had no internet back then, you know,
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't like what the bookstores had all these, you know, new age self-help books that I could go. I mean, I had to go into like almost like where witches would go into like these kind of bookstores that were just, you know, not Barnes and Noble. And
I
if it was,
remember it well.
yep. But I attracted it. It was amazing. It was like the right people, the right books, you know, came and I found, I met a guy and he was from, you know, lived in, Sacramento. And, you know, we kind of would go up to Redding and then Redding, California, which was a spiritual community and, you know, near Mount Shasta, California. And I was just attracting the right things and people and, you know, really getting into that place where I was like, oh, the what I'm learning about my I saw my life changing, right, by
Mm,
applying this, but I didn't know they were actual laws. So I was just digging in and diving into anybody that could teach me about these universal laws. And I was having great success. You know, 5 years into it, I had a great paying job. I had no debt, money in the bank. I was married, had my dream home, ideal body. And then it came like, wait, I'm not passionate and I don't feel like I'm on purpose in my career. So, what I knew to be true that I had applying for about 5 years was if I feel in lack of something, then I need to bring in what it is that I want as a feeling state. Because
mm,
whatever I do, right, it's not I'm going to be happy or be successful when I get. It's not about when I get, it's do it now. So, I
mhm.
started cultivating the feelings of passion and purpose in my life, in my,
I
you know,
love that.
yeah. And so that's when literally my very first book, Perfect Pictures, came to me. I got woken up at 1:05 in the morning. The first sentence, the first paragraph was just downloading. So I got up. This was my first, you know, my Melanie, my meditation teacher, and
Mhm.
what I'd been learning for 5 years, they were channeled beings, right? And Melanie channeled. So, and she even said to me 5 years ago, you're a channel. And I had no idea what she meant. I was like, oh, okay, great. Right. So here I am 5 years later, looking for passion and purpose, cultivating that. I got up in the middle of the night, 105, started writing. And it wasn't me writing. My hand just automatically started going. That happened for 7 nights in a row. I got the book published, started speaking in spiritual bookstores and churches, and people would ask me to coach them. And when I did, when I would say, no, I'm not a coach, but call me and, I'll walk you through the energy. I'll walk you through what I know about the law of attraction. And they would get results. And I love doing it so much that I felt passionate and on
And
purpose. So I
purpose. Yeah.
continued to follow that path. And so here I am 25 years later, 20 years later.
Amazing. Amazing. Yeah, I've been in, I've been in this world for a long, long time. I was born with my spiritual gifts switched on, so I'm a natural medium. So I was always had an awareness of spirit. And it's so amazing to me how much we have evolved because, 23 years ago, when I first started sitting in circle for spirit and really actively using my spiritual gifts, I could clear a room telling people that I was a medium. People would be really legit afraid of me. They would be like, oh my God. And here we are in 2021, and I can fill a room like 3-4 times over sometimes by them knowing that I channel spirit and that and I also used to work as an evidential medium where I would bring through messages from people's loved ones. And, these are, I love, and I remember the moment that was a real pivot moment for me. I was watching the medium John Edward, and we were down live in the Apollo in London, and he asked us to look around the room and asked us, what could we see? And I looked around the room, and my thought was every race, every gender, every, just ordinary people, like a huge subsection of society. That was what I thought I was looking at. And he said, well, I tell you what I can see. He says, I see evolution. He said 10 years ago, and that would have been about the time that I had started with, really, really kind of properly sitting for spirit and things. He said 10 years ago, it would have been you 14 in the front, and some of you would have left at the break. Right. Yeah. And he says, I'm not saying this to boost my ego, but like I filled this theater twice. And it's a theater that sits like 2,500 people or something. And he filled it twice that day. Like he did a matinee in the afternoon, and then he did an evening one. And I remember thinking, yes, we are evolving on this planet so rapidly. And he's so right, because it was becoming way more mainstream. And I mean, that must have been about 15 years ago, and it's becoming way more mainstream. Now I'm in a place where we can have these conversations where we're actually talking about channeling beings that are here to help us. What I would love to talk to you about is you channel this Council of Ascended Masters. And I work a lot with Ascended Masters, but I have my spirit team that I call Skylar that come through. And what I love about this is that there's so much love available to us, like in the broader universe.
Yeah.
And what it's kind of like, I just feel like at the moment, like everyone is watching Earth at the moment. Everyone is watching us ascend. Everyone is watching us kind of like, but they're not watching, they're actively, like they're available to help master the energy, to help master the next level, the ascension and everything coming through. How do you experience your channeling when you're working with the channeling and everything, because I have found it to be, I wouldn't be who I am today if it wasn't for my spirit team of what comes through. And there's just such a source of grace. And I love chatting to other people who channel as well.
Yeah. So one of the first things I realized when I started bringing them in, because my consciousness goes out when I'm working with another person or a group of people, they come through, and it's like they get to totally use my body, for their messages. But I also have my own connection with them, and we chat and stuff, and I feel into them. And one of the first things that literally, like you said, absolutely changed my life. Now, I've been doing this work for 25 years, at this point, 23 years. And when they came through and showed me, there was such it still gets to me, such a deep understanding that how infinitely loved we all are. And so for the first time, I felt the infinite love. And I was like, wow, there's no judgment. There's
No,
no
none.
there's no condemnation. There's no like, oh, would you just hurry up and ascend already? I mean, there's none of that.
It's excitement, if anything.
Yeah, but there's like this infinite love, this infinite adoration, right? And it's just it's almost overwhelming to the human
It
being. It's
is.
like,
And
wow, right? And having that completely changed me. And knowing that at any time when I'm not feeling it, I could just tap into it. And it's like, oh, like even just now talking about it, right? And to be able to communicate that as a human being to another human being, it shifts
it's
people.
amazing. Yeah.
But having them come through and really being able to communicate that and have the energy of that available to others, it's absolutely life-changing. People's lives are shifting in ways. It's so beyond therapy. It's so beyond and love therapy. I started with therapy and looking at the past and looking at what happened to me and all that kind of stuff. It's so beyond that, because it's like,
Yeah.
oh, we could just release the imprints of those past times and those past things energetically, and then really feel the now, the love that exists. And it doesn't matter what happened to you or where you came from, because all of it literally brought you to this now moment to then create your life the way you want to. And it is an evolution, and everybody's got their own story. But so many people are stuck in the victim consciousness. Oh, things happened to me instead of for me. And so it's
Yes.
life
Yeah.
changing.
I mean, for me, it's been absolutely life-changing. When I first started channeling my spirit team, Skylar, I didn't even have a name for them. So I used to just call them the transition team, because that's what we did. We transitioned people from that victim state into that awakened, eyes open state. And it was such a powerful movement, basically. In people would be so moved, and you would feel, you could feel the connection. And like you, I call it my cinema. When they step in, it's like I'm sitting in the back of the cinema eating popcorn, and I'm kind of paying attention to the film, but kind of not at the same time, because
Yeah.
I'm not really fully aware what's on the screen, what's happening in the outer world. And I'm in this really beautiful, super relaxed state, and then the gold comes through. And so it sounds to me that you channel like in a very, very similar way, which is really beautiful. Um, if you were to say to somebody, how could they have their own kind of relationship with a spirit team, or really beginning? Because mine started like you with guides, and then kind of built from there, like the consciousness built from there. I'd always been aware of a second consciousness in my mind since childhood, because it had always been a source of grace for me since childhood. But then as I started developing spiritually, I went more towards the guides, and then I kind of circled right back to the consciousness again. So if you were speaking to someone who was maybe wanting to like explore this a little bit in a nice safe container that they could go and explore, what would be the, meditation for me? Is that your go-to answer as well?
Yeah, meditation is an amazing, absolute tool. I mean, it's essential to kind of quiet the mind. And also, what we teach in the desire factor, because the council, it's their information that came through my
Mm-hmm.
stories. It's really like that step-by-step process of being able to be in that, openness, to be able to not only create our desires, but to able to receive the information from our co-creation. Because what's breathing us, what's beating our hearts, is our divine connection. It's our divine
Yeah.
co-creator. It's the divine that gave us that idea. And so then what do we as a human being do with it? Well, that's what connects us and aligns with it. And so the steps, there's 7 steps to the desire factor in the book. And first one is alignment. And so, principle of alignment, meaning aligning our consciousness, what we say, what we think, what we perceive, what we feel, and the actions that we take, or the behaviors or habits that we have. And it's aligning all of that with our desires. Well, desires are, coming from the divine. So it's like when we align with our desires, we're aligning with the divine.
I love
And
that. Yeah.
meditation is a tool in order to do that. It's one tool, but it's a very powerful tool.
Yeah. I think also as well that for me the meditation as well is also about taking the first steps to mastery. It's the first steps of really mastering your thoughts, because there's so much intentionality in a meditation. You know, when you
Yeah.
sit down to meditate, you are intentionally taking control of the thought process, as opposed to, well, I'll just go with whatever pops into my brain today. It's like a space that you've created, a container that you've created where you're like, okay, this is a moment where I am going to guide these thoughts, as opposed to I'm just going to go with whatever, which
Yeah.
I
And
think.
for me, it's like meditation helps me get out of the personality me with all of my past and all my, my baggage, if you will, my conditioning that comes with me, and allows me to rise up to a higher perspective, to a higher energy, so that I am more open to receiving the information from my guides, from my divine. And it's really that it's so intentionality, right? It's the intention. It's like we talk about in the desire factor, the principle of action is a very last principle. But in everything we do as a human being, when we take our bodies over to sit in silence and meditation, we're taking an action, right? It's an
Yeah.
inner action, but we still are taking an outer action by moving our bodies into a quiet place, sitting in silence, right? And so we as human beings, the container for the divine, need to do the actions.
Mm, I love this. We talk a lot in the My $1 Million Experiment book within the community, and it's also out now. But within the book, we talk a lot about, the difference between action, just plain old action, and inspired action, because inspired action has that divine spark. So you really never get tired in inspired action, whereas most people are taking action, unfortunately, from what I call the shoving the boulder up the hill
Right.
kind of standpoint. So it's like it's very exhausting, it's very hard. And that's, the piece that you were talking about in your book, the desire factor, the alignment, so important to align yourself with everything, because then you move into a place where the action starts to come from the inspired place. So tell us a little bit more about your brand new book. How did it all come about? What was your driver behind this book? And it probably just came through you like the rest, right?
Well, it's funny. This one had a very different feel and spin and timing and process than all the other ones. And I now know why. It's because the council was behind it, right? So it was different in the sense that the other books all did come. I remember one of my books, The Art of Having It All. It literally was just a block that kept coming to me within a 2-week period. And then I was done with the download, and then the book was finished. And then it was a matter of just getting it out in book form, crossing the T's, dotting the I's, making sure that, it all
Doing the
flowed
human
together.
stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And I have a brilliant editor that does that, because I am the channel. She is the one that, crosses the T's and dots the I's. So thank God for Danielle. This one was interesting because I was literally at a Abraham Hicks seminar,
Mhm.
and I was with my husband, and all of a sudden I just got the desire factor. And Esther hadn't said it, Abraham hadn't said it, but it was like the desire factor. And I went, oh, and I turned to my husband and I go, it's the desire factor. And he goes, ooh, what's that? And I go, I know, but I have a feeling we're going to find out. And I go, it's a great title for a book. And he goes, yeah. So, and of course I sat with it because I didn't get any inspired action to do anything with it, but I wrote it down. Right. So about a year later, I am on a cruise ship in the middle of the Mediterranean. I had gifted my mom and my dad, my sons, who are at this point, I don't remember how old they were, maybe 5 and 6, who are now 10 and almost 12, and my husband. So the 6 of us, we go on this Mediterranean cruise, and we just spent the day in Venice, Italy, and had a really wonderful morning having croissants and cappuccino. And there we were in Marco Square, and there was a band singing happy birthday to my dad, and the boys were, having all the pigeons around them, and they were feeding. So we had this
Oh,
beautiful morning.
fabulous.
Yeah. And then so my parents and my kids went back on the ship, and my husband and I had our time, because what you have to know is many years prior to that, when I first started dating my husband, I went on a 2-week trip to Italy with my parents. And one of the places that we went was Venice. Now, I'm a fashion girl. I've always been that way since I was a little girl. I just found a picture of myself. I think I was maybe 3, and I had a little Easter hat with the matching dress and the matching purse and the gloves and the shoes. I've just always loved to dress up like that. And so when we went into Venice many, many years ago, gosh, going on 15 years ago, I walked in and I saw for the first time all these different brands all in one place. It was like Versace and Valentino and Dolce and Gabbana and Gucci and Chanel. I mean, it went on. And I was like a hummingbird going into each one of them, right? And my husband had said to me, he was boyfriend at the time, I don't think I can afford you. And I said, you don't have to afford me. I'm going to afford myself. I just left corporate America, just started my coaching business full time. And so it didn't make sense, for me to go buy anything right at that point. But I said, I'm going to come back here with you someday. And I'm going to go into any store and get whatever I want, not because I want to get stuff, but because I want the freedom of choice, knowing that I've created the success, created the money so that, as you say, you can't afford me, I get to afford myself, right? I'm going to afford myself whatever it is that I want. I'm going to treat myself to whatever it is I want. So here we are back on
Full circle moment. I
yes,
love this.
yes. So here we are. My husband and I do the shopping spree, right? And he's such a good sport because, like a hummingbird, I'm going into Dior and I'm going into Chanel and I'm going into all these different stores. And finally, I go into Dolce & Gabbana and I found this cute little bag. It was actually less expensive than anything else I saw, but it was this beautiful purse. And I thought, that's the one. And so we had this beautiful rest of the day, had lunch, got back on the ship. And so I'm unpacking this purse and I'm looking at it as this amazing symbol of my success. And I hear a voice say, that's so materialistic. And I was like, hey, where'd that come from? That's what? And that's where I was like, wait, how could this be material? Yes, it's material, but how can the journey I've just been on be wrong? How can that experience of going in and feeling that freedom of choice and then being able to select what I want, how can that be wrong? And then the book started downloading. And what it was really a understanding that everything here on earth is material, but it's also energy. That purse is energy. That experience and that journey I'd been on was full of energy. That got me to the place of having a manifestation. That's not wrong, but we've been programmed to think it's wrong, or that something, especially those of us that are considered spiritual, right? If we're
we have no business making money. We have no business like having nice stuff. Like we are supposed to eat cabbage and be in the Jesus sandals, right? That are 50 years old that we got from someone else.
Right.
Like it's I call it spiritual pauper karma that we like to, and it's something that I think souls really like to experiment with and play with, the idea of like the spiritual pauper karma. But we're in 2020 now. The time for that is over.
Yeah, and it's an evolution, and so this was a download to give us full permission to experience the oneness, the wholeness of both energy and humanity, non-physical and physical, to be able to create what it is that we want. My desire came from a deeper part of me, that the human being, Christy, that loves fashion and loves purses, got that desire, but it was the divine that gave it to me. It knows its audience. It gave it to me because it knew who I would become in the process. And boy, who did wow, what I became in the process, what I created in the process. So it was interesting because this downloaded and then it stopped. And then I started full on channeling the council, and then it started up again. So it was a stop, start process. And the evolution of it has just been incredible. I even share a story in the book where I tried to go my traditional route of getting the book published because I've had already success as published author. My last book, Quantum Success, was international bestseller. 2 of my other books, Art of Having It All, were New York Times bestseller. So here I go to get the Desire Factor published. And the energy in this book, the concept in this book, must have scared my traditional, energetically, she was probably not aware of it consciously, my traditional literary agent. because obviously to get a book published, you need to have it pitched by a literary agent if you're going a traditional way. And I even had a publisher of a new, really spiritual wealth, new thought publisher that wanted the book. The editor in chief wanted to see the book and have the proposal, but I, as the author, couldn't send it to him. He needed to go the right way and have a literary agent send it to him. And I even said to this woman who did it, my other books, I had success. All you need to do is give him the proposal, send it to him in an email, literally like put forward to the email. And she kept very robotically, nope, I can't do that. I can't pitch this book. I can't. And I would say, why? Because I can't get you a 6-figure advance. And I'm like, okay, you're not hearing me. This book needs a home. I don't care about the 6-figure advance. If I got it, if that was available, awesome. But that's not the driving force. It needs to be published. And so she refused. And then I went to another literary agent that had been wanting to work with me. Same thing. Wouldn't pitch the book. Wouldn't literally take an email and forward it to this editor-in-chief. And I was like, I know, right? And I was like, okay, counsel, what's up with this? I've got this book that's downloaded through me from you. It's incredible information. More people, it was like, people need to hear this, because it's not about being a victim. It's not about, having a desire and then denying the desire because we think it's not materialistic, or we think it's materialistic, or that, it's not okay, or whatever it is. This information is so important. It needs to get out. And it was like, what's up, counsel, right? And they said, it's not going to be through traditional method. Okay, so show me the way. So then I wrote about the whole thing in this book, but the divine orchestration of this was literally like, they gave me a picture of connecting with Arielle Ford, who's a friend of mine. She's also an author. She used to be, years ago, a literary agent. So I emailed Arielle and I said, she's the one that had the connection to that publisher. I'm like, would you mind being the literary agent on this book? All you have to do is send it to him and you could be the literary agent. And she's like, no way, Jose. So I'm like, what's up with counsel? It's like, what? And they said the energy has now shifted in a different direction. It's an opening to something different and new. And a day later, I was talking to another friend of mine, Kelly Sullivan Walden. She's also an author. She does dream stuff. And she's like, hey, how's it going? Like publishing books and, what's going on? And I said, told her exactly what I just told you. And she goes, oh, you got to call my literary agent. Let me call her and see what she thinks. She knew who I was. As a matter of fact, on Facebook, I had posted a picture of me training my dog. And this woman who I never knew posted, hey, your dog looks like mine. I'm like, great, like kind of thing. Didn't think more of it. It was her literary agent. She knew exactly who I am. She was excited to talk to me, got on a phone with her, very spiritual person, had this incredible conversation. She goes, yeah, well, I became a literary agent 10 years ago because I had a spiritual magazine. And Arielle Ford, she brings her up, not me, brings her up and says, Arielle Ford said that I should be a literary agent. So I did. So it was like the connection that, was just incredible.
All went right.
But because the energy flowed in a different direction, I was willing to do something different. And I got to tell you, this has been, Deborah had a couple of other publishers that came and made me offers. And she's like, nope, it's not the right one. I would say, don't take it. And then we went to Beyond Words, which is the publisher for The Secret.
Okay.
And they have been just amazing. And I'm in a family. Michelle, the one of the owners of Beyond Words, said to me yesterday, my desire factor is to have you publish more books with us. And I said, honey, I'm not going anywhere because this is my family now.
Oh,
so
that's amazing. I love that.
Yeah, because all the other publishers, as great as they were,
I think that's such a poignant reminder. Sorry, I just cut you off there, but sorry about that. But I was just thinking, it's such a poignant reminder that sometimes when you're being rejected from something, you're actually being aligned to something better. Totally. How many times have we been in this place where we're so bummed? Like, I can feel your frustration, and you're like, you just need to send the email, right? Like, it's like that. Yeah. But and then also as well, like, what gives? Like, what am I, chopped liver? It's kind of like that, right? And getting really annoyed. But then actually what's really happening in the metaphysics, in the ether, what's really happening is you're being realigned to something that fits you so much better. Like, you can have a literary agent, or you can have a literary agent and a publisher that makes you feel like you're part of a family. Like, what would be better than that? You know, that's
Yeah.
so incredible. Like, I love that.
Yeah.
And yet we can be so frustrated when we feel like we're not making the headway that we thought we were going to make.
Yeah.
Which
I
I
have
think.
I have another, like, total, like, metaphysical God moment when my parents are elderly. They're 85 and 89. And my parents and I have been having conversations of, are they going to stay in their house? Are they going to want to go to a retirement community? What do they want to do for the next, however many years? And so we came up with this plan to sell their house and our house and get a bigger house and have them either have a casita or have a guest house. Now, all this would be fine and dandy if my parents weren't abusive to each other, verbally and mentally, both of them. And
Okay.
I had somehow forgotten that I had lived with them all my life and had vowed that I would never have a relationship like theirs, right? But here we are, we're planning this. They put their house up for sale. We find this house that would be really great for all of us. And there was a casita that would be attached to our house, but they'd have their own private entrance, their own private place to be. And this house had been on the market for months. Nobody had made any offers. And here we go to start making the offer. I'm following the stages, the steps, the principles in the desire factor at this point, right? And then all of a sudden, we go to make an offer and they get a cash offer and it was accepted. So here I was, and this is one of the things that we teach in the desire factor, is that I felt disappointment and I felt
Mhm.
frustrated. So I had to literally process the energy of the frustration and the disappointment and then bring in the compassion, because as human beings, we have moments that don't feel good as a as a human being, and that was one of those things. But then I said, okay, I kept saying this or something better, and I was like, ooh, I'm so excited for the something better. And just realized a couple weeks ago that my parents still scream and yell at each other. And I was like, wow, could you imagine if we would have bought that house, we'd be moved into it right now, they'd be screaming and yelling at each other, and my kids would hear that. My kids have an amazing house. My husband and I don't yell at each other. They have love and respect in this house. Their childhood is very different than my childhood. And can you imagine them feeling the energy and hearing grandma and grandpa yelling and being so verbally abusive to each other and rude to each other? I was like, oh, thank you, counsel. Thank you for having someone else go in there at the last minute, make a cash offer so that it wasn't ours.
It wasn't
But
even on the table anymore. It was like, this
right.
is off the table. And it
Yeah.
is. And quite often we get into this mental state of like we somehow missed out, that oh, why did this just happen to me? And of course, like, we kind of tip slightly into that victim. We're not like full blown, but we're flirting with the inner victim right in that moment. And there it is, just arranging something even better.
Yeah.
There is the energy just aligning to something that is going to be better for everyone involved as well, right?
Absolutely.
Because, you know, I can imagine that how long could you be in that situation before you had to say something to your parents, right? So like, this is the thing, isn't it? Right? Like, so it probably it saved a lot of drama on both fronts.
Yeah, it did. But I had to confront them and say, listen, I can't have this in my family. I don't want this in my family. And oh, we'll be on our best behavior. You're not even aware when you do it. So the first step in transformation is having awareness of the behavior that you're doing. If you're not even aware of it, you can't change it. And so it's like, that's why if I had any confidence that they could change their behavior after 65 years of marriage, when they're not even aware that they're doing something, right? Then there'd be a different story. But when you're not aware of something and you are not even willing to admit that you do it and have that, there's no way to change, right? It's like with anything. Someone can
Absolutely.
someone can be a victim, and if they're not even aware of it, they're not even willing to look at how they're playing the victim or being powerless, they can't change it.
No, you can't change until you have the awareness. I absolutely agree with that. But I want to bring up something really important here that's coming up. And that I think is really, really important is that these are your parents, right?
Mhm.
And we are so conditioned to like accept them, love them, and all the things. And we can still love them and still have amazing boundaries. And
Mhm.
what I want to witness for you is how much courage it takes to actually say, well, here's my standard.
Yeah.
And I love you as my parents, but you don't actually make my standard for my family.
Mhm.
And, and I want to kind of, anyone who's listening to this, to say that it's okay to basically back yourself. It's okay to do what is right for you and your family, even if it means, you've got your parents or your sister or your brother or whatever other family that you might have around you that you feel obligated to kind of make happy in a way. And so many of us are in that state of energy where we're trying to make the family happy, that it's actually okay
Yeah.
to stand up for yourself and say, well, actually, this is my standard. And I think this is such a thing, this is something that we talk about within the $1 Million Experiment. We talk about it within the community and things, that it is us that sets the standard for our lives. And, it would have been so easy in the same way, like you had a totes awkward conversation with your parents, right?
Mhm.
Like I did not envy you in that moment having that conversation. I know that that would have been hard, and I know that that would have been difficult, but it was the right conversation to have. It was the right conversation for your kids. It was the right conversation for you and your husband. And on some level, it would also be the right conversation for you and your parents too, right?
Right. It's creating boundaries. Yeah.
It is creating boundaries. And I think it's so important, but I think so many of us shy away from these difficult conversations. So many of us set the standard too low, and then we're like, Kelsey Priest,
Mm.
when the universe is meeting us at that low standard too.
Yeah.
They're like, what gives, universe? Are you not loving me? I'm like, dude, you're not loving yourself. And
Right.
I love that you were willing to set the bar high, even if it meant having a difficult conversation. And this is something that I really want to encourage anyone that's listening to the podcast and anyone that's in the $1 Million Experiment, that it's okay to set these standards, to give yourself permission to say, you know what, my standards here, and I'm not willing to compromise on this.
Yeah, and the
No.
thing is, if I wouldn't have done that, I would have gotten in the drama triangle with them. I would have become, their rescuer, right? And then at some point, I would have become the victim, because it's like, oh my gosh, I am now living in this screaming and yelling, right? And then they would become the persecutor, and round we go. It's like we all get stuck in the drama triangle. And then my kids are the victims, and my husband's the victim, and by putting out a boundary, I didn't say you got to change in order for me to be happy. I just said, this is not you, accepting as they are. This is how you guys are. And that's what you do in your relationship. And that's fine for you guys, but that's not okay for me. And it's not okay for my family. So to allow you guys and not try to change you guys keep living the way you're living, and we'll keep living the way we're living. And it's like, this is what is okay, because that takes me out of the drama triangle. I'm not trying to rescue them. I'm not making them out to be the
Absolutely.
bad guy, right? And it's like, you have your relationship, and that's the way you guys are. I've chosen a different way, and it's not right or wrong. It's just, this is for me, but it's not going to work together, so
Yes.
yeah.
And I really wanted to acknowledge like how you navigated that like a boss, because this is the thing, so many people do not navigate these situations well,
Yeah.
because we don't have the spiritual tools, we don't have the human tools to actually have the conversation and initiate the conversation and to remain in our power. The power starts to break down, and then there's a lot of blame, and before you know it, you're rocking the resentment, and then like you're in a downward spiral of victimhood, right? And
Exactly.
to be able to have the conversation from an empowered place, to actually say, I fully accept and love you, and that this is your thing. I'm using my discernment to say this is not for us,
Yeah.
but I can still love and accept you as you are.
Yep.
And, I am not asking you to bend yourself into a pretzel for me,
Right.
and that, I think, takes a level of mastery. And that's what we've been talking about, is really, that's what we're both in. We're both teachers of metaphysical mastery, and that is what metaphysical mastery is: to be able to have the kahunas, to have those conversations and navigate it like a boss, so that you end up in a situation where the energy is the best for you, for them, for us, like for the
Yeah.
world.
It's all
It's
about it. It's all about energy mastery. And that's really what I've learned deeply from the council is, how to be real and true and authentic within myself so that I can then be that way with others.
Yes, exactly. And it's safe to do this, because I think that's the
Mhm.
big thing, isn't it? Like we like, it's like our fear is, in fact, I brought this through just yesterday in one of my classes, but our fear is like, when you watch those movies, and like especially the American movies, where they're like, we're at DEFCON 5, and it is like, like it's serious stuff, and there's meteorites coming towards the earth and we're going to be annihilated. Our fear behaves like that.
Yeah.
So it's like, a conversation with our parents that's going to be awkward, a conversation with our child that's going to be awkward, a conversation that needs to happen between a husband and a wife, or in a spousal relationship, that is going to suck, right? And then your fear just goes to 10. It's like, it's DEFCON 5,
Right.
and it's so blown out of proportion. And it's okay to have these conversations. It's safe to have these conversations. No one's going to die. It's going
Yeah.
to be okay. And for me, what metaphysical mastery has meant in my life is that I am okay no matter what.
Yeah. You're loved no matter what.
I am loved
You're
no
you're
matter what.
you're
I'm okay no
adored,
matter. Yeah.
supported, protected, all of it. That's the thing that, again, we started this conversation with the council. It's like, they might not be happy with me. They might not like the decision that I made. They might have their own emotions that come up, but that's their emotions. That's their consciousness. I cannot protect them from their own emotions. I cannot put thoughts in their minds. I can't put words in their mouth. I can't feel the feelings for them, or protect them from their own feelings. Their feelings are theirs and my feelings are mine. And yet, no matter what reaction or what experience they have about this news, right, it's like, I have compassion for them. I'm sure they're not going to like it, but I know that I'm loved and adored, not by just them, but by the divine. And that it's like, it's okay. It's more than okay. It's absolutely
Yeah.
necessary for me to, find alignment within myself, because that's the first principle in all of it. It's principle of alignment. If I am not aligned, I can't create the money.
Exactly.
I can't create the purses. I can't create the family. I can't create anything that I want if I'm not
No.
aligned.
And you can't create the impact that you might have and desire in the world either.
Yeah,
That's
all of it.
the founding principle of Get Selfish, is that you get yourself, and that you give yourself permission to live
Absolutely.
in alignment with yourself, because without it,
Yeah.
you're you're disconnecting from everything else.
Yeah.
And that's where the resentment comes in, that's where the blame comes in, and you start to play the games of blame, the blame games, and all
Exactly.
the victim stuff, and life starts to get really, really freaking rough.
Yeah.
And then when you move into alignment with yourself, you move into the ease, you move into the joy, and you move into the flow. But that doesn't mean that some days you don't have to have difficult conversations. Absolutely. But that's
Yeah.
where the mastery comes in. That's where knowing that you're going to be okay no matter what, and that you are loved no matter what, and that you can really step up in your personal power.
Yeah. Exactly.
I love that. I love that. Christy, this has been absolutely amazing. Tell people where they can find your books first and foremost, because I know that there's going to be some people that are going to be really excited
Awesome.
for your books. So where can they, obviously, normally probably the usual channels, but let us know where they can find them.
Yeah, so you can go to the desirefactor.com. We list a bunch of different places. I mean, they're in full distribution. So wherever you typically go buy your books, go there. But the desirefactor.com, you'll actually, when you go back, put in your order number, and you can get all the bonuses that come along with it. So there's about $900 worth of bonuses. You get the opportunity to work with the council in a group setting when you do, and there's some different processes and meditations. So it's amazing.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And where can they find you online as well? Just the same website, or where do you prefer? What's your social media channel of choice where people can find you?
So I have ChristyWhitman.com. You can definitely Google me. I'm Googleable. I'm excuse me, I'm an Instagram one, Christy Whitman
Okay.
one, Christy Whitman one, and then on Facebook, Christy Whitman International.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for
Thank
having a
you.
chat with us today.
Thank you.